You're back. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to see you again. In the last episode of The Science of Gaming, we discussed perception, what perception is, what immersion is, and how the two blend together in video games to aid and change the way in which we perceive the world around us. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it both above and in the description down below. In today's episode, we're breaking down endurance and how playing video games helps us build it. Typically, when we hear the word endurance, I'm sure the first thing that comes to your mind is something similar to bikers climbing a mountain, or a runner running a 5K, or if you're a part of our audience, men and women training rigorously for months in exhibition, building the necessary skills in order to punish their opponents in an 8-sided cage. The physical feats of men and women pushing the body to its extremes. But endurance is much more than that. Don't get me wrong, video games certainly help us push our bodies. From the exergaming franchises we spoke about in the strength episode, to the use of virtual reality to get our bodies moving while we play, to games that simulate actual sports like golf simulators, to simpler things like virtual tracks on actual exercise equipment. We can push our bodies with the games we decide to play. But endurance, at its core, is fortitude. It's the power of enduring unpleasant or difficult processes or situations without giving way. When we think about it like that, there's so much more that we realize that video games are teaching us about endurance. You may not have ever noticed this, but when we look at gaming through this lens, we find that there is a certain stoicism in gaming. For those not familiar with the philosophy, don't worry, I've got you covered.
So what is Stoicism? At the most literal level, it's an ancient philosophy from Greece and Rome. But when people hear philosophy, they think that it's not practical, that it's not for them. And in fact, Stoicism is the most practical of all the philosophies. If we're trying to capture Stoicism in a single quote, it would be hard to do better than Marcus Aurelius. He says, "Objective judgment now at this very moment, unselfish action now at this very moment, willing acceptance now at this very moment of all external events." The three disciplines then are basically the discipline of perception, that's how you see things. That's the discipline of action, that's what actions you take in the world. And then will, how you endure and bear the difficulties and suffering of life.
I know what you're thinking. We're talking about video games here, Naya. How did we drift into ruminating on ancient Greek philosophy? We're discussing fun things to do on the weekend here. How dare you bring Seneca and Marcus Aurelius into this? What gives you the right, the nerve, the hubris? But I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Just indulge me a little bit. Stoicism is in and of itself the act of enduring. When we load up a video game, we are exercising some of the core tenets of Stoicism. We're doing what we love. When we game, we expect nothing from it other than the pleasure that the doing generates. We're doing it merely for the enjoyment of it. We're not expecting that thing to go our way or against. We're just allowing ourselves to be. And in this being, through these superficial worlds where we can experience extremes of yes and no, of pain and pleasure, of failure and success, we endure. We first detach. We detach from the emotions that typically keep us from these adventures, because we know we're in a safe environment. And then we endure whatever comes our way inside the game. You see, when we are able to detach from the pain of one of our character's experiences, in other words, experience the pain without inflicting it directly on ourselves, we flex muscles in our brains and in our hearts that help us realize this principle of stoicism in the physical.
When you're feeling anxious about something, most people are maddening. They believe it's their duty to cheer you up. However intelligent they might otherwise be, they say things like, "It'll be okay, don't worry," even "cheer up." The Stoics were appalled. They hated any kind of consolation that aims to give the listener hope. Hope is the opium of the emotions and must be stamped out conclusively for a person to stand any chance of inner peace, because hope only lifts you up higher for the eventual fall. The Stoics advise us to take a different path, To be calm, one has to tell oneself something very dark. It will be terrible. I might have to go to prison. The lump really could be malign. I probably will be fired and humiliated. My friends almost certainly will succeed. But, a huge, consoling, stoic but. One must keep in mind that one will, nevertheless, be okay. Okay, because in the end, as Marcus Aurelius said, we are each of us stronger than we think. Prison won't be fun, nor will losing one's job or being made a laughingstock, but one will get through it. Stoicism emboldens us against the worst fate can throw at us. The same should apply to everything. Don't only expect rain, expect betrayal, infamy, sadism, theft, humiliation, lust, greed, spite. One will stop being so angry when one learns the true facts of the misery of life. The wise person should aim to reach a state where simply nothing could suddenly disturb their peace of mind. Every tragedy should already be priced in.
While we might not be physically suffering while we play, we most certainly get to experience suffering through the eyes of our protagonist, through the people that they encounter along their journeys, through our perception of their wins and their losses, their inner motivations. When we see worlds through the lives of others, it allows us to almost play along in these games of life on mute, far enough away to not lose anything, but close enough to feel something. And what do we learn from exercising this form of stoicism in gaming through the narratives of digital characters?
The Stoics believed that everything around us operates according to a web of cause and effect, resulting in a rational structure of the universe, which they called logos. And while we may not always have control over the events affecting us, we can have control over how we approach things. Rather than imagining an ideal society, the Stoic tries to deal with the world as it is, while pursuing self-improvement through 4 cardinal virtues. Practical wisdom, the ability to navigate complex situations in a logical, informed, and calm manner. Temperance, the exercise of self-restraint and moderation in all aspects of life. Justice, treating others with fairness even when they have done wrong. And courage, not just in extraordinary circumstances, but facing daily challenges with clarity and integrity.
We build endurance through video games, not just in our hearts or in our minds, but physically as well. If you've ever played through a story mode, spent hours wandering through a game's expansive map, taking on quests that steer you miles from the end of the game but have a specific goal end in mind, you are flexing your endurance. You are seeing a task, focusing on it, forsaking all distractions and any obstacles that come along your way, all to get that task completed, or to make it to the end of a video game. When we finish something, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, that propels us to finish other things in real life. That dopamine that hits us at the end of the video game can inspire us to search for it elsewhere. When I play The Sims and I yell at my sim to stop being lazy and wash their dishes, after working for 4 days straight without a bathroom break or sleep or food or social interaction, all so that I can purchase that cute little wallpaper upgrade for my cute little sim house, that translates into the real world. That feeling of buckling down and working hard for something, of laser focus, 9 times out of 10, after I'm done yelling at my sim to wash their dishes, I'll go and wash my own. Because if they can do it, then what's my excuse? And if the dopamine hit is that great digitally, imagine what it would feel like if I washed my dishes in real life, in my own environment. A silly example, I know, but it gets the point across. Gaming doesn't just help us build endurance by making us stick it out through pointless tasks. It changes the way our brains work.
When Super Mario Bros. Came out, my friends and I became obsessed. Like, we wanted to get to the castle and rescue the beautiful Princess Peach from the evil Bowser. We get to school and ask each other, like, dude, what level did you make it to? Did you pass the game? We never asked each other about details on all the different ways we might have died. When it comes to games like this, no one ever picks up the controller for the first time, and then after jumping into a pit thinks, I'm so ashamed, that was such a failure, and they never want to try again, right? What really happens is they think, oh, I've got to remember, there's a pit right there. So I think next time I'm going to come out with a little more speed. I'm going to jump a little bit later. The focusing obsession is about beating the game, not how dumb you might look if you get hit by a sliding green shell. And as a direct result of that attitude, of learning from but not being focused on the failures, we got really good, and we learned a ton in a very short amount of time. We were the right side of this graph. This is what I call the Super Mario effect, focusing on the princess and not the pits, to stick with the task and to learn more. This caused me to reflect and realize that there were lots of other examples from my own personal experience where this attitude of life gamification, this Super Mario effect, led to more success and therefore more learning.
Our ability to take out a target in a game like Call of Duty with endless visual and audible distractions actually helps our brain practice multitasking, which in and of itself helps to build our endurance. We learn to get things done regardless of distraction. We learn to focus. We learn to be more productive in a world with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Reddit to focus on one thing while ignoring all the rest. Even the act of gaming itself brings its own level of endurance, learning to play longer, more strategically, to the point where you could endure enough to turn pro like several of these other gamers here. Or those gamers that learned to race digitally and ended up translating that endurance into a win on an actual racetrack. After we've spent hours manifesting something digitally, we bring those powers of manifestation and that determination into the real world. Because, as Alan Watts puts it, when you're done dreaming the dream of 100 nights' sleep, when you've done all that you've ever hoped and dreamed of, in a dreamscape, you begin to dream the dream of the life that you're living today. I think that's a great place to end today's video. What are ways that you think that video games help to build endurance? Sound off in the comments down below. As always, if you like our channel and you appreciate the content that we're putting out, please consider subscribing and becoming one of our patrons.